Hey, everybody, this is John Bruni, and we have an incredible guest today. Coach Tony Blauer has been in the martial art, self-defense, and defense tactics and combatives industry for almost 4 decades. And he is one of the only combative experts who has successfully effected training across all combat-related communities: self-defense, combat sports, the military, law enforcement sector. His research on physiology and mindset as it relates to confrontation management has influenced over 3 decades of reality-based martial artists. Founded by Tony Blauer in 1985, the Blauer Tactical Systems is one of the most respected self-defense training companies in the world, specializing in research and development of close-quarter tactics and scenario-based training for law enforcement, military, and professional self-defense. There's so much more we could say, but we're going to jump right into it. Welcome to the show, the one and only Coach Tony Blauer.
John, thank you. As I was listening to you read that, I realized I need to make my bio longer, so it just like takes up the whole show, and we don't talk. But holy moly.
Dude, you've done it all. I mean, that's what I say. We're talking decades, and that's where we're going to get into a lot of stuff today, because what I love is we kind of live in an era where we have people that want to be an overnight success. You know, right. I took one class and now I'm an expert, and you have 4 decades of being in the trenches, dealing with the real stuff. And I want to get into that, because how did you get started in martial arts? I mean, this journey goes back to being a child.
Yeah. So as does every journey for most of us, right?
Yeah.
It's crazy, and there's so many ways to kind of like dig in and tell the story. But I grew up in the 60s, and I watched, like, in the 60s, like our TV shows, black and white was becoming color TV, but the shows were Mannix and Streets of San Francisco and the Wild Wild West and the Green Hornet and Batman, and I remember growing up like glued to these shows, and there was something that was speaking to me when I would watch these like action scenes. And it wasn't just like every boy in that generation played with G.I. Joe and wanted to be like a cop or a firefighter or whatever. There was something like when Bruce Lee would fight, and I didn't know, of course, I'm 6 or 7 years old. I don't know who Bruce Lee is, and nobody knew who Bruce Lee was, back then. But I was just mesmerized by the martial art part. And jump ahead, when I was 15, I'm sitting on the floor trying to do the splits, looking at Bruce Lee magazines. My mom comes by, and we had a family business, and she says to me, "So, in a year or two, you're going to have to decide about high school and where you're going to go, and what are you going to do? And you're going to go into family business. You want to be a lawyer? Do you want to be a doctor?" And I looked up and I said, "Well, Mom, school's not really going to be that important for me. I'm actually going to be a famous martial artist like Bruce Lee, and I'm going to develop my own martial arts system." And she pat me on the head and says, "Okay, dear, we'll talk about this when you're older." There was something in there that like all time stood still when I was dreaming and thinking about that. I was just, transported into this fantasy world in my mind of what that could be. And, but that wasn't the event or the circumstances. That was maybe just like that obsession slash passion. As an athlete, I played every single sport. I wrestled, I played baseball, I played, I grew up in Canada. We didn't have sports like you guys do in the States. But, I was an all-around athlete, but I was afraid of all competition. If I was, and it was weird. It was a weird dichotomy. Some people, if you got any in your audience who are in psychology and psychiatry, and they go, "Oh, sabotage, syndrome." I didn't. It was weird, because I would be up at bat going, "You can hit a home run and win the game for the team, And at the same time, it was don't strike out, don't lose the game for the team. There was always this like devil and angel conversation going on in my head. If I was wrestling, I'd go, like, I can take this guy. And then it was like, watch out he doesn't choke you out. Watch out he doesn't pin you here. Watch out you don't break your leg on this next move. What, you know, and I was overwhelmed with the fear. And I was a high level competitive skier, you know, for my age bracket. But I was always afraid of like falling. If I was truly sabotaging, I wouldn't show up to the race. Mm-hmm. I'd say, John, where's everyone? The race was yesterday. Where are you? Oh, wow. I entered in my calendar wrong. Sabotage is like I don't want to get into that, but it was just this idea. I competed hard. I showed up. I was in martial art tournaments. I competed skiing and all that. But if I was standing there, what you'd see was the facade, like of let's go, but inside my heart's racing, the physiology's going, vertical breathing. I'm like, holy shit, you know, like freaking out. You know, it turns out, I think 3/4 of the world has that too, but we just maintain. I got some amazing like coaching stories or coaching fighters and talking about their fear, but just to try and keep this tidy, I was afraid of everything growing up. I thought I had the most fear in the world, but it's still, even to this day, I make a joke. Like now, you know, part of one of the divisions of my company is coaching and mentoring people, corporations, individuals. And I come in and do a talk, and as a fear management expert, one of my jokes is fear management needs new management because nobody wants to talk about fear. We especially type A guys like you and I. It's like, John, talk to me about all your fears. You're like, what are you talking about? You know, let me punch you in the face. How's that? Now you're like, we don't like to talk about fear. And the reality is fear is an instinctive, intuitive reaction based on a survival component that kept us alive. It's why there's no dinosaurs now, but there are humans, right? There's something in our adaptive nature that allowed us to navigate all sorts of violence and danger and evolve. Well, that system is still in us, and it's normal for us, whether it's on a date, a business deal, competing in a sport, to weigh and consider the dangers and the risk. But it's where you focus that really influences in your outcome. But there was an event in 1972-ish that put me on the path to be a martial artist, self-defense practitioner. And I got jumped by two guys when I was about 12 years old. And it was an amazing moment because I was leaving a baseball game, speaking of sports, and kind of like skipping through the yard. I was all alone. And there was the elementary school that I went to, Souvenir Elementary School, was about 500 yards down the street from a new high school called Western Laval. And as I was walking out of the parking lot all alone, these two kids, and I was, let's say, turning 13, and they were 15 or 16. And the size and strength difference between a 15 and 16-year-old and a 12-year-old can be significant. So these two kids see me, they go, hey, kid, come here. So I like run over to them. I go, yeah. They go, hey, is this where you go to school? I go, yeah. And they go, you going to high school next year? And I go, yeah. And they go, got a surprise for you. I'm like, okay, what is it? And like they're like talking within arm's reach. And the guy reaches out, grabs me, spins me, puts me in a full Nelson. And I'm locked out like this. And I'm like, what's going on? What's good? And this guy, remember Sugar Ray Leonard's Bolo punch he did to Duran? You know, like coming around. This guy goes like this. He goes, welcome to high school. He grabs me and he goes like this and he starts to do a Bolo punch. And as he does this, I'm so terrified right now. I'm pulling against the guy's arms. And you know this as an athlete, that if you're going to do take a shot to the body, you know, you tighten up, right? You don't go,
yeah, absolutely.
You don't expand, right? So I'm like this, and I'm pulling as hard as I can against his arms, trying to escape. In other words, for anyone watching the video, not listening to this, my abs are as tight as they can be on a human being, both in the contraction of the eccentric muscles, but also amplified by fear. And everything goes into what's, for my law enforcement friends out there, they'll know this term, tachypsyche, big fancy word for things went into slow motion. And this bullet punch comes swinging around, and as it hits me, that I've never been beaten up before, I imagine, remember me, Mr. Fear, this punch is going to kill me. It's in slow motion, this much bigger kid coming around, and I scream, this blood-curdling terror scream. I make this joke that I don't mean to offend anybody, like my sister couldn't scream as good as I screamed. I make this joke, like just making funny, self-deprecating, right? Scream like my little sister, but better. I scream in anticipation of this impact. As it hits me, and I feel the guy holding me, I feel his arms slack. I feel his fear. Oh shit, we didn't mean to hurt this kid. We just meant to scare him. And as I get hit, I feel that slack, and I double, and immediately my intuition says, scream again. And I go, ah, and I improvising, I go, like I'm dying. And I feel this guy lets go of me. The guy in front who hit me looks at his buddy like with wide eyes, and they take off. And I'm on the ground going, ah, and then they turn the corner, past the tree line. They can't see me. I stand up, I fix my shirt, and I'm like, can I swear on your show? Or is it a no swearing?
It's
show?
Whatever you want to do.
Okay. Because I've been holding it back.
No, there's nothing.
Okay, so I wipe my shirt. I go, fucking assholes, right? And I walk home. My dad comes home from work, and he goes, "How's your day?" I go, "Tell you how my day was. I got beaten up by two guys." And he looks at me. I got like no marks on me. My hair is not right. He goes, was it a pillow fight? I go, "Funny, Dad," right? And I go, "No, seriously." And I tell him what happened, and he says, "Well, you got to learn martial arts." And that had never even occurred to me, even though I was like glued to the TV watching the Green Hornet, Batman and Robin, it just didn't occur as a kid. There's only one school near me, a Taekwondo school. I sign up there, and suddenly that connection from growing up watching the fighting in the 60s and doing that, I felt like I was home. I felt like this is going to fill this void for fear and personal power that I felt was missing in me. It did and it didn't, but that's another story. But that was really like if you said to me, do you have like an origin story? What made you start? Mm-hmm. It was getting jumped by those two guys. And I tell the story here, like I could have just told you, I just could have said to your listeners, I go, yeah, I got jumped by two guys. I started Taekwondo, and then I started boxing, and then then I started teaching, and it morphed into this. But what's significant is at the age of 12 and a half, 13, I was intuitive and cognizant enough about the body language and fear that I manipulated the duration of the fight and the level of violence through feigning fear and pain. And this has become a big part of what we teach men and women around the world and kids around the world with our Be Your Own Bodyguard programs and stuff like that. Is out of that, like years later when I was putting together the program, I remembered certain confrontations and I realized, good Samaritans and good humans don't want to be in a fight. So our messaging is that we're not teaching people how to fight, we're teaching people how to not fight. I was able to diffuse and de-escalate that confrontation, even though I was, outnumbered and overpowered, by using my brains. Like there was no move for me to do. There was no physical move for me to do at that moment. So I found that, like to me, that's the most interesting. It's not macho and it's not glamorous. Mm-hmm. What do you mean? You screamed and pretended you were hurt? Yeah. And they left? Yeah. No flying side kicks? No. No uppercuts? No. You didn't shoot them? No. In other words, how can I diffuse and de-escalate this and get back to my family? That became kind of like the underpinning philosophy of like a true self. You look at a lot of self-defense out there, and it's labeled self-defense, but it's really practicing violence.
Mm.
And I'm okay with that from a scenario perspective, but it's not teaching the moral, ethical, legal part.
Mm-hmm. And we're going to jump into that because I want to get into the fear management. I'm stoked about that because I think that's already got me fired up. But I want to talk about the difference for a second of reality-based martial art training and traditional martial art training. Before we came on the air, I was talking a little bit about my background and how I started to look at the martial arts as a tool, that different things to accomplish the goals I wanted to have. I mean, for instance, on my programs, they drop a bowling ball off an 8-foot ladder on my stomach, these type of things. I had to learn how to breathe. I had to learn how to have muscle tension. I wanted to be able to blow up hot water bottles. I had to learn a lot of what we call kung fu techniques.
Right.
But it was all adapted to do what I wanted to do. I got the conditioning hammer and all those different things, iron palm training. But the whole point was it wasn't necessarily traditional for me martial arts, but it was using martial arts techniques as a means to an end.
Right.
And what I want to talk is like your background. You started out in Taekwondo, and now it's in reality-based martial art training. And so can you kind of talk about the difference between that, like the difference between somebody doing a kata every day versus this reality-based? Because the more and more I learn about it, it's just so intriguing.
Yeah. So interesting because, I do a rant and people could probably Google it. I think it's online it was a Facebook Live, and I've done a couple of these where I do a rant called the four categories. And I don't classify myself as reality-based self-defense. Other people do, but that RBSD, reality-based self-defense, that's a lot of the modern martial art programs where maybe they stop wearing gis, they're not focusing on the belt, and everything they talk about is about street defense, and that became reality-based self-defense. Reality-based self-defense actually got coined and became a thing well over a decade after I started my program back in 1980 was when I first said, you know what, from here on in, we're only going to be doing scenario-based training. So I had wrestled for years, but before the UFC, nobody would consider that wrestling was part of martial arts. You would think of it as a sport. So I had a strong foundation, a really good balance, and really good strength for my wrestling. Then I did Taekwondo for years. 2 years after doing, and when I say for years, like I'm talking about 7 days a week. My basement became a full-on gym. I worked out every day. I had Mackie Wars, the striking pads for conditioning.
I still have those.
So, right. But when my alarm would go off to go to school, I'd slide. I had a low bed, I had 13, 14, 15, 16. I'd slide that out and I'd start punching that before my eyes were just opening. I would roll out of bed and do an ab set. I'd do handstand push-ups against the wall before I'd go to the bathroom to whiz and brush my teeth. On the way to the bathroom, I was obsessed, right? If my sister walked out of her room while I was walking in the hall, I'd throw a kick at her face. It was just like nonstop, right? So it was 7 days a week. When I was 15, I got in a fight in school where a kid came up to me, shoved me, start to initiate a fight with me. And I was so in love with my training, my instructor at the time, Alex, he said, if I catch any of you abusing this, misusing this, fighting outside of a true self-defense situation, you're kicked out of the school. And so, I was always a good kid. I grew up in a nice suburban area. I didn't run around the street causing trouble. So not only did his words mean something to me, but that also resonated with me. I just wanted to like, hey, let's have a good day, you know? And so this confrontation happened in school where this kid thought I had done something. Teacher was out of the classroom, comes up to me, shoves me against the wall. My hands go up reflexively, right? Whoa, dude. His name was Lance. I go, Lance, what are you doing? He goes, yeah, fuck you, man. Like, and the veins are coming out of his, he's like freaking out. I'm going, calm down. Now, my position now here, now we know years later, this is finger splayed outside 90. And this position primes the body's physiological, what I call it, the body's organic airbag. Your startle flinch is like an airbag that deploys and it bypasses executive function. It's the most amazing thing as a human weapon system. You know, if I could surprise you, John, through Zoom, your hands would come up and go, dude, freak me out. Like that was some like Matrix shit. You jumped through the screen. But, you know, you wouldn't palm strike me. You wouldn't sidekick me. Your hands would come up to protect your head. So I ended up, and this is like in 1987 when I stumbled across this. So people need to track where I am in my tangents here. But here I am, 15 years old, and I'm trying to morally, ethically diffuse the confrontation. And my body naturally took, body language is 60% of communication. It naturally took this position. Years later, I would look at that and go, okay, we're going to call that a nonviolent posture. It's got a legal, ethical, moral application, but it has a functional, protective application that if the bad guy suddenly moved at you, your body would flinch to cover your head and push away danger and expand like an organic airbag. How genius is that? Your body does that without any training. Now, what I did is I spent years figuring out how to weaponize that. How do we turn that movement into a palm strike or a smash with a forearm or come back with the hands or scoop, you know, all of these little protocols. But at 15, I wasn't thinking any of that shit. I'm just, here's where I was, John. I'm in my head, I hear my instructor, Alex, going, if you are caught fighting and it's not real self-defense, you're out. So I'm 15. When you're 15, certainly back in 1975, you're not thinking guy will come back with a gun or this will be a lawsuit or this is going to be on the news. There's no fucking social media. Nobody's filming it. All the asshole kids are standing around still going, fight, fight, fight. All right. It's school. But I'm trying to diffuse it because of a moral imperative, because I don't want to lose my martial arts. And there was a moment there where I could see him getting more angry because he was misinterpreting my nonviolence as fear and cowardice. As a 15-year-old with my testosterone, it was like, yeah, let's fight. But it was like, no, I don't want to fight. And so inside, and this is part of what we teach people, that we call it the Trojan horse metaphor, that the exterior is the Trojan horse. Inside is the warrior. And morally, ethically, legally, the exterior is, hey, I don't want any trouble. And we've got multiple nonviolent postures, depending on congruent with different scenarios. But inside, I'm playing battleship on Lance. Inside, I'm getting ready for violence. But what was happening is in Taekwondo, it's mostly a kicking art. And you've got a long reverse punch and you got back fist to set up a side kick. But understand that if I use Bob here, you know,
yes,
he had gone, hey man, you know, and he's standing like this, threatening me. And all my head is doing is, you don't fight, you'll get kicked out. And then part of me is going, he's too close to kick. I couldn't step back because my back was to a wall. I'm going, he's too close to kick. And I didn't know how to punch at that range. I didn't know what I was going to do. So it was almost like, you know, like if you're a kicker and a jiu-jitsu guy gets you on the ground, suddenly you're like, oh, I don't know what to do. And I didn't know what to do there. And I could see the veins in his neck, man, getting bigger, and he was getting redder. And I knew he was going to sucker punch me. I just knew it. And he says, come on, you pussy, come on, you coward. And I could tell he started to blade. And when he started to blade, I saw his hands start to ball up, and I went, holy shit, he's going to hit me. And this is so amazing. I love telling this story. He goes, come on, you pussy, I'll let you have the first punch. But as he said that, he goes, I'll let you have the first punch. And his hand starts to, and I knew he was going to hit. And I'm standing there like this going, hey, take it easy. I'm patting the air, take it easy. And as he says, I'll let you have the first punch, on the letter U of the word punch, I throw probably the world's shittiest jab, right? I go, because I'm conflicted. I'm confused. I don't want to fight, but I know he's going to hit me first. I throw this punch. I hit him in the face. But as I hit him, I see his hand is already windmilling over. So he was about to sucker punch me. And so I'm standing there. I go like this. I throw the shittiest jab in the world. It hits him. And then I see, as I'm recoiling the punch, I see this windmilling John Wayne haymaker come around, and the body's startle flinch response goes like this. As it's recoiling, my hands come up like this, and his arm careens off my forearm, and his arm bounces over me, kind of like this behind me. And he falls forward like this. And I'm right here, his head's right here. I grab his arm and I grab his head and I go, whack, and I turn it right into a wrestling throw. Oh, yeah. And I whip him to the ground. He hits the ground hard. I grab him by the hair and I throw him into two desks that stun him. So I've just thrown a shitty punch, then almost get knocked out. Hands come up, step in, pull him off balance, step in, throw him to the ground. Don't let go here. Whack, throw him into two desks. He's stunned against the desk. At this point here, I'm now in a stance and I scream at him, 15 years old, if you get up, I'll fucking kill you. Obviously, I don't mean that literally, folks. 15-year-old freaking out. He doesn't get up, adrenaline, everything. And this is important for all of you athletes and anyone interested in martial arts self-defense. And this is actually your answer to RBSD, reality-based self-defense. Everything I did up until the stance at the end was improvised and adapted. What's interesting is that night when I'm reliving, lying in my bed, staring at the ceiling, reliving the fight, I didn't think about how cool it was that I used a behavioral stance in the Trojan horse, because I didn't have any. I was 15 years old. I immediately, and I was turning 16 in like 6 months, going to get my learner's permit any day. And all I kept thinking about is I got to learn how to box. Because had I known how to box, I could have ended that fight without all of that messiness. And I thought the messiness at the end, it made me feel like I had no skill, that my training didn't work. Now hold this. You got to pin these thoughts, because I'm leading this somewhere big. Hopefully I haven't lost your audience yet. I know I freaking go off on these crazy tangents.
I love it.
In that moment of throwing that shitty punch, and although I won the fight, I felt so out of control with the movement because I didn't know what was happening next. I was adapting. It was dynamic. It was fluid. There was fear. I didn't like how I was breathing. I didn't like the adrenaline dump after. Years later, you learn like everyone goes through that. But in the moment, I was so hyper analytical and introspective as an athlete. I was like, this can't possibly be real. Because what we don't realize when we watch our heroes in movies, in the news, on an ESPN highlight, we don't know what's going on inside them. And we're actually seeing the highlight of the performance where they were in their flow state. We don't see the trials, the tribulations, the fear, the failures and all that. And then what we end up doing inadvertently, that becomes our narrative, and that becomes what we compare and contrast to. And we start looking at going, well, I'm less than that because I could never do that, not realizing what it took to make that highlight reel happen. So I box. I got some crazy boxing stories. But to answer your question, when I started teaching, I was teaching a blend of wrestling, kicking, and striking, a precursor to MMA. And I wasn't the only guy. There are people all over the world, I'm sure, doing that stuff. But this is like 13 years before the first UFC. So there was no MMA name. There was no reality-based training name. But I was very inspired by Bruce Lee, which was very eclectic. But I was doing because of the confrontations I've had, I was doing something that was a little bit more dynamic than, okay, we're going to do a little Wing Chun, we're going to do a little Western boxing, we're going to do it, and doing it more stylized. And I was working out with a couple of guys, and I had my first paying student, this kid Mitch, in 1979 or 80, and he got into a fight 3 months after I was training him, and I was teaching him boxing, clinching, wrestling, kicking, right? The three ultimate stuff that make up any foundation for a good MMA guy. And I show up for his class the next week after the fight, didn't know what the fight had happened. And he's there, sitting there, and he's furious. You can tell that he's furious. And I asked him, I said, what happened? And he starts going, fucking guy, no. I go, Mitch, calm down, tell me what happened. He says, the guy dropped me with a left hook. I go, Mitch, what do you mean you dropped you? How come you didn't zig or zag or slip or parry or intercept or whatever? So he tells me the story. He's running late for class. Kid sees him running. He sticks out his foot, trips him in the hallway. Mitch is 15 at the time. He goes falling in front of 15 kids. They all fucking laugh at him. He's embarrassed. He picks up his books. And while he's picking up his books, he's like, you motherfucker asshole. And the guy goes, and Mitch had never asserted himself before. The guy goes, what did you call me? He goes, you heard me. And they have this like 2 15-year-olds fight. And the guy comes up to him and says, what are you going to do about it? And he pokes Mitchell. So Mitchell grabs his shirt, slams him against the locker bank, and says, man, you've been bugging me since school started. I don't even know who you are. You've been, on my case. What the fuck's your problem? And he's telling me the story, and he looks at me, he goes, I said, and? He goes, that's when he dropped me. I go, well, Mitch, what do you mean? Like why didn't you do anything? And he looks at me, John, he goes like this, while I was holding his t-shirt. And then he goes, I had my books in my hand. Now, those of you who aren't watching the video can't see what I'm demoing here. But imagine this, you're holding your school books, a knapsack in your right hand, and you've got somebody's shirt tied up, balled up fist, right, in their shirt. Where are your blocking and striking tools? They're non-existent.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? But get this. I didn't know it at the time, because 7 years later is when I discovered the startle flinch response and started to develop what has now become the SPEAR system. When you flinch, your body contracts at a violent speed. Whatever you're touching when you flinch, you continue to hold on to for maybe a second or two longer than you would have liked. So if you're holding a shirt and your books and somebody goes and throws a hook punch at you, when the stimulus is introduced too quickly, your reptilian brain, the limbic system, the amygdala, fire this fear response. Part of that startle flinch response is the body's tightening up to protect the head. If your hands are free, they'll come up to protect your head. If there's time and space, the cross-extensor reflex will fire and push away danger. But if your hands are holding anything, they'll lock up around it. And so what Mitchell did when the guy threw the punch is both his hands clamped down, one on the shirt, one on his books, leaving his head sitting duck. Now, I can explain all this now. I didn't know what was going on there. But what I did in that moment is, and I tell this like it was like the god of self-defense hit me with a lightning bolt. And I said, kind of like embracing worldwide self-defense, because that was my passion. I said, oh my God, we teach self-defense wrong. And what I meant there was, by not always, operative word here, always reverse engineering our training based on a realistic and relevant scenario, we are not training the brain, the emotional system, the psychological system, and the physical system. If you're just doing the physical, the emotional, psychological can overwhelm you. And this is an evidence-based statement based on neuroscience. There are trained fighters who people go, what happened to you? Like, you fucking looked horrible in the ring there. That was performance anxiety and fear. So even though they had the skill leading up to it, even though they warmed up and they knew who the guy was, they couldn't perform. There's evidence of cops and military not getting their gun out, not being able to shoot. They have the skill, they understand the rules of engagement, they have the training, but their emotional psychological system creates doubt, doubt creates hesitation, hesitation creates fixation, and now you're fucked right there. So these incidents early on in my life, years later, they became like deep, like study sessions on what was going on there. And so I ended up creating, at the time, the world's first behaviorally based, exclusively based on physiology, physicality, physics, and psychology, a system of self-defense that was non-gender, age, or task specific. Could take anybody and go, look, here's what your physiology does when there's sudden danger. Here's what happens psychologically. Here's what you start to think. Here's how you have to rethink this stuff. And here's how you're going to have to move because your complex motor skills are being hijacked right now by this primal gross motor movement. And, I spent decades figuring out the drills to weaponize the startle flinch. And now that's some background because I'm going to give you the answer to RBSD. And when somebody practices a traditional classical martial art, they are adapting their body and their mind to execute the exact movements, the precision, however they're going to move, whatever movements they're going to do from the way they're going to kick or stand. You're replicating the movements of those style. When somebody practices a combat sport, they're learning whether it's jiu-jitsu or sambo or Thai boxing or boxing. They're again adapting to the rules and regulations. And okay, the rounds are 2 minutes here. Amateur kickboxing. Okay, the rounds are 5 minutes. MMA. Oh, this is going to be 5 rounds. And you're adapting and you're studying tape and you're moving and you're only working on what you need to work on as you understand and believe it to win the fight because it's about W's and not L's, right? Reality-based came along as the world got more violent and people saw the need for that. But what the reality-based self-defense practitioners, I'm trying to say this in a polite way, failed to appreciate was that physiology rules, psychology rules. Our first day of training, when we do our master instructor course, it's a 4-day course for our law enforcement, public safety professionals. We do the first day, it's all about physiology. Because I tell people, look, all of you have an unconscious bias. All of you come in as experts. And if we can't run a bunch of drills through physiology where you actually, in a Socratic fashion, meaning the student goes, oh, okay, this is the right answer. Like if I tell you, right? Experts are people who memorize other people's material. It's not a big deal. Everyone can be an expert. Get the test right. Answer the right questions. The real test is a violent encounter. And that's category 4. So I created these categories for this very discussion. Category 1 is all martial arts. Category 2, combat sports. Category 3, reality-based self-defense. The practice of the first 3 is your personality and body-mind adapting to the moves that your coach or your trainer says, this is the way we do it in Krav Maga. This is the way we do it in Jiu-Jitsu. This is the way we do it in combat Aikido. This is the way we do it in Kyokushinkai. What that does, and this is so heavy and so subtle, is when you adhere to the movements of a system, you're adapting and you're myelinating the neurons in your brain to think about those moves only, to move in that way, right? So if you only know how to square dance and someone says, let's do a waltz, your body doesn't know what to do. You feel like a beginner, an amateur, you're screwing up, right? A silly example, but I'm just giving an example. And if you don't know how to dance and someone says, come on, let's go dance, you're like, no, I don't dance. Because you don't know the moves, because you haven't you haven't created the neural pathway for the movements. When you practice a certain way over and over and you create, and this is the heaviest part, the most important thing in personal safety is situational awareness. If you have no awareness, you have no chance. You can be 100-degree black belt. That doesn't exist. There's only I think the highest is 10th degree, right? You can be 100-degree black belt, but if you're texting on your phone when somebody punches you in the back of the head or kicks you in the face or stabs you or shoots you, no awareness, no chance. But what if I told you dogmatic myopic adherence on a certain program creates a myelinated neuron that fires a certain way. What people call muscle memory doesn't exist, but for generic purposes, what people think is as muscle memory. This is the heavy thought. That actually impacts your true situational awareness because there's a part of your brain looking for an opportunity to do this move. If I ask a Taekwondo guy, you're an ATM. Guy goes to mug you. He's got his hand in his pocket. You're not sure if it's a real gun and you're going to make a move. What are you going to do? What's the Taekwondo guy going to say? Is he going to say, I'll double leg him and take him to the ground and choke him out? Or is he going to say, I'm going to kick him? If I ask the same question to a boxer, is the boxer going to go, well, that's an easy one, jump back kick? No, the boxer's going to say, well,
strike him.
I might gesture with my hand, hit him with a body shot, hit him with a cross, right? I asked the grappler, you're going to go for it. You decided, fuck this shit. I'm defending myself. I don't think he's got a gun. And I'm not giving advice here. I'm just talking about neuroscience. What's the MMA guy going to do? Is he going to go, oh, you know what? I'm going to do praying mantis and hit that nerve cluster? Or is he going to go, I'm going to double leg the guy and take him down? In other words, if you understand that there, every practitioner will automatically select the bias that they're most comfortable with. And that's normal. But that's not true situational awareness. True situational awareness is your ability to observe this in a detached way and go, what is the safest thing I could do? So when we teach self-defense, we teach it from a behavioral, scientific perspective, where we ask people, what is the scenario? What are the moral and ethical, legal obligations here? What is your body going to do prior to any training? And so this was a very long answer to you. Hey, talk to me about RBSD. The reality-based self-defense people actually practice. They may be doing headbutts and eye gouges, but they're doing it in the same way that a Kyokushin guy might be doing a rising block and a chop to the throat. They're doing block-based training, which trains the neuron to move a certain way and look for a certain stimulus to move. And I know, and neuroscience knows, that is potentially hijacked or limited in a high-stress situation where sudden danger is introduced. So over the years, maybe 20 years ago, if you had said to me, you're part of reality-based self-defense, I might have said yes. Now I go, no, we train much differently. And so I created a fourth category called violent encounters. And the violent encounter is always controlled by the bad guy. A bad guy always starts the fight, never the good guy. And that's paradigm breaking, because that means that in that moment, you have no awareness, no preparedness, right? In all these other programs, it's like, okay, we're going to work on this drill tonight. All right, let's go. And anyways, I went really deep down the rabbit hole on that one. I apologize.
Bro, I love that. On so many levels. One, that's a masterclass. I think most people are sitting here like drinking from a fire hose, listening to that, because it is on such a different level. And I think it's so important for people to understand that the whole idea of bias, getting stuck into your own personal, this is how we do things, situational awareness. I'm jumping all over here on my questions, but this is one of the main things I think when you're talking about this is how do you teach people to perform instead of panic? Because it's that whole reflexive. So I want to get into this a little deeper, because right now I think people are already, they're all in hearing this. They're like, I got to hear more.
Hope so.
How does this fear management, because I want you to talk about that, because that plays into this whole situational awareness aspect. How does fear management improve performance? Because it's not the absence of fear. I think for so long we've talked about people being fearless, and that's really not what it is. It's the management of that fear. I don't think that any of us ever get to a point in life where you're going to do something crazy that you're not afraid. At some level, I mean, if you're going to be honest, I guess that's what I'm trying to say. People can lie about that, but there is, at some level, some kind of fear. How does fear management play into this and the panic response? We know that a lot of people, when it comes down to confrontations, a lot of people just freeze. They don't respond at all. So I don't want to get too much, too many things, but can you kind of dive into that a little bit, this whole fear management?
Yeah. So I agree with you, like the whole fearless thing. That's really the origin story of No Fear, KNOW, in the name of our fear management program. Again, for those of you on just listening to audio, No Fear is spelled KNOW, fear. But you remember the fantastic, t-shirt company. It was an adrenaline-based company, motocross, BMX,
Oh yeah.
adrenaline. No, there was the No Fear company. I had every one of their shirts in the 80s. I loved their slogan, and they're still around. Great company. But one day, we were always talking in the 80s after my student lost. Interesting, when I told you about the student that got sucker punched in his room, because I was doing private lessons at the time. I said to him, "Are those your books there?" He goes, "Yeah." I said, "Grab them and grab me like you grabbed the guy, and let's reverse engineer this." Right. And then we started just working on scenarios, and that's what I've been doing ever since. And this is where the serendipity of that led me to the creation of this whole No Fear program and our neural circuitry of fear flow chart, and called cycle behavior and all this stuff. We started doing like Fight Club type stuff before Fight Club. We would wear Kyokushinkai helmets, boxing helmets. I remember I grew up in Montreal, Canada, hockey helmets with face guards. And we'd fight in hockey gauntlets and Bruce Lee Enter the Dragon gloves and just beat the shit out of each other. But we wouldn't just stand there. I wouldn't go, "Okay, John, you and me, let's go and spar." It would be, "John, go stand over there. You're waiting at a bus stop." And then two guys in gear would walk up and go, "Hey man, what are you doing here? You're not from around here." We would do these scenarios. I immediately started doing these scenarios where we forced people to improve their situational awareness, develop their verbal de-escalation skills. And it was amazing that there were people who couldn't do it. They couldn't talk. They were so focused on the fighting. They couldn't take a nonviolent posture. They wanted to be in their street boxing stance, whatever. And I would talk to people. I go, "Listen, in the real world, outside of your martial arts school, you're walking around as a human. You're a police officer walking up to a car. You're a firefighter keeping a crowd back. You're a black belt who owns two schools, but you're in a grocery store right now and you bump into somebody who's an asshole, right? We aren't our martial arts self when we're out in the real world. At least most of us aren't." So when I started doing these scenarios, they became a monthly thing. And this is kind of like the Fight Club before Fight Club. We get together and we would set up these scenarios. And in the exercise, I would tell people is the goal here is to experience the fight. So this became the tapestry of your knowledge bank. What's it like to fight six people? So if somebody had a question, I'd go, "John, what's your biggest fear?" They go, "Well, like 2-on-1." I go, "Okay, cool. You're up next." And it'd be a 2-on-1. And you'd look at me and go, "You motherfucker." Right. Like I would ask people, "What's your biggest fear in a fight?" And then each one, they would tell me. And then I would improvise a scenario for them. So they had to deal with the emotional, psychological, not just go spar with that guy. He's not in my weight class. Okay, spar with that guy then, where we can regulate who our confrontations with, right? You can't tap out in the street. And people like to say things like, "You're a big guy." People like to say things like, "Size doesn't matter in the martial arts world." And I'd always say, size always matters. Like, size, of course, matters. That's why there's weight classes in boxing. That's why there's different size gloves. If you're a really good driver, and I'm a really good driver, and we agree to demolition derby, and you have a Prius, and I have a Ford Raptor, I don't give a shit how good a driver you are anymore. I'm going to fucking run you over. So, because there's skill, the skill is in your brain. The size is in your body, right? Now, in this car metaphor, the body is your physicality. Well, guess what, folks? Everyone listening to this, if you're 5'7" and you're an adult, that's you. You're 5'7". Maybe you get a little faster, maybe a little stronger, but if you're in shape, that's not going to change a lot. It's what it is. So you got to accept that. That's fear management. You could say, "Well, if I was bigger, I could fight that guy." Well, guess what? If that guy is a predator and he's picked you, this is a choiceless choice. So the only thing that's going to get you in the fight and through the fight is your ability to manage your own fear, because that guy picked you. And if you're a female, And you go, it's not fair. Women aren't as strong as guys. Like, doesn't matter. If you're a big guy, small guy, big woman, small woman, in shape, out of shape, on game day, it's all mindset. You can't be a different athlete on game day. But this vehicle metaphor, the car metaphor is this: your body is your car. Your mind is the nav system, strategy. Should I go here? Should I turn left? Should I pause? Should I wait? Should I fill up? What all the thoughts you're thinking. In this metaphor, what's the fuel? And the fuel in confrontation management is fear. And the semantics, and the joke I made when we first started, fear management needs new management. If you look at let's say an X Games skydiving, free jumping, like, and you ask these guys who jump off of buildings and cliffs in wingsuits, let's talk about fear. Some of them will go, I don't have any fear. And I tell this story. I was down in Fort Bragg working with one of the units that I work with. I got in a couple of days early. And Saturday, we're in a coffee shop talking about the training starting Monday. And the guy says, what are you doing this afternoon? I said, I don't know, probably just like chill out, go over the course, try and get a workout in. He goes, why don't you come jumping? And I go, jumping, like up and down? He goes, ha, ha, ha. He goes, no, like out of an airplane. I go, I'm good, thanks. Jumping out of an airplane. Let me check my list. No, not on my list to do today. He goes, aren't you Mr. Fear Management? And he does the air quotes. I go, yeah, buddy, I'm managing my fear by not jumping out of the airplane. And he was there with another guy. They both started laughing. The guy who asked me laughed like cacophoniously. The guy beside him, nervous laugh. And I knew in that moment that he didn't like skydiving either, but they were in the same unit, which means he was qualified to skydive because he couldn't be in the unit. So I said to the guy who asked me, I said, let's talk about fear for a moment. I said, you got no fear jumping out of an airplane? He goes, no, I love it. I got like over 600 jumps. I jump whenever I can. I said, no fear. He goes, no. I said, then let me pack your parachute. And he stiffens up. He goes, I'm not letting you anywhere near my fucking parachute. And I said, did I just introduce some fear? If I change your ritual and I change your preparation, does that change your mindset? And he sat up and he realized. Now, what I want your listeners to understand is this. Elite athletes and elite performers, musician, actor, you doing a demo. If you think back to the first time you did a demo in front of a bunch of people, you had a million thoughts running through your head. I want to break my hand here. I hope this goes good. I don't like if I screw this demo up, I'm not going to get invited back. Am I really this good? Am I doing this? All of these thoughts are trying to distract you from that singular focus of here comes a bowling ball. Like if I mistime my breathing, this could crack my rib, damage my diaphragm. Oh, and so on and so forth. You know what I'm talking about. Every performer has an adaptation to fear. And at some point, that fear becomes part of their ritual. And then that ritual becomes part of their prep. And then years later, I go, dude, talk to me about your fear management before an event. You go, nothing, man. I fucking thrive on that shit. It has morphed from survival to thrive. But because it was incremental over time, and we don't understand how to explain it to other people because we're not mentoring. We just say no. So this special operations dude said I had no fear, but when I said let me pack your parachute, he was like, "You're not coming anywhere near that chute, right?" Suddenly, I introduced fear, but it wasn't like scared shitless fear. It was like doubt. And what I tell people when you understand the psychology of fear is this: doubt becomes hesitation, hesitation becomes procrastination, procrastination becomes fixation, unchecked. All of that. That's like dominoes. The second you have doubt, you got hesitation. You can't, if I say to you, John, do this right away, and you look at it and you go, and you say to yourself, I wonder if I can do that. That's doubt. While you're thinking that, you're not moving. That's hesitation. If you think about it too long, you're procrastinating. It's an amazing cycle. And what people don't realize, and this is when I go into my mentoring and coaching, like at a personal development level, there's only one resource in the world that we can't regenerate, and that's time. And so when you don't understand fear and fear management, what you're actually doing is you're consuming your time that's limited on life or to make a deal. You know, there's like this window where you're going to ask this woman or this man to marry you, and you're looking at it's this magic moment, and you're going, should I do it? Should I not do it? And in that moment, you know, her phone rings or his phone rings, and the moment's gone. It's like, boom, I'm making this really dramatic and romantic. But that's what it is. We can't get time back. In a high stress, dangerous moment, that timeline is really short, right? You get a bad tooth and it starts to hurt you. You don't go, oh my God, I hope I have root canal. I haven't experienced that yet. I'm so excited to call my dentist. What do we do when our tooth starts hurting us? We procrastinate. Why? Because of fear. The fear spike creates that procrastination, the fixation, and now non-clinical anxiety. And finally, 10 days later, the pain's too much. You go into the dentist and he goes, why didn't you come in earlier? I could have given you antibiotics. Now we've got to pull the tooth, right? And so the longer we wait on something, typically the worse it's going to get if it's a negative. So to recap this, again, another deep dive. Your body, your temple, right? That's your car. In a high stress situation, I don't want anyone on there going, what about a Prius? Talk to me about consumable. No, we're talking about, electric cars. No. Use my metaphor, please. The fuel in a new event, and you said this earlier, you hit the nail on the head, that all of us experience fear if we go outside our comfort zone. The comfort zone might be your audience. I might say to you, like one day, your show continues to grow and grow and grow. And then one day it scales up and now it's 100X and you're about to go live. And someone says to you, this is really big, man. You got to crush this one because this first show, you don't get a second chance to make this first impression. And the audience is now this. If you start thinking about that in the wrong way, that is going to suppress your energy, right? So to me, after decades of studying performance, I recognize this. And this is what I learned. This is why I started telling you about the Fight Club in the 80s. We do these fights every month. And the people that I thought would dominate sometimes didn't. And the people I thought would get crushed sometimes dominated. And it wasn't size and it wasn't that they won. And what I realized, and I created 2 slogans I want to share with you and your audience. One is this: the people who managed their fear managed to fight. People who manage their fear manage to fight. It doesn't guarantee or ensure victory, but it guarantees and ensures that you protect your dignity and your pride, right? That you can leave the event, go, you know what? I fucking lost, but I fucking tried as hard as I could. And you won't do that if you don't manage your fear. The other part of that, the flip side is this, is that you can't be brave if you're not afraid. When I go back to the skydiving story, the guy who's an adrenaline junkie and jumps out of an airplane, if you're not afraid of dying, if you're not afraid of jumping out of an airplane, does it take any courage to jump out of the plane? No, it doesn't. But what if you signed your name on a line to become part of the military, and they said, you gotta be able to do, high distance fucking dives from fucking outer space, 15,000, 20,000 foot. And you're like, I got a problem with height. Yeah, but you need to be able to do that. Okay. You're scared shitless, but you go up there and you do this. Okay, let's go. I can trust my equipment. I trust my training. 3, 2, 1, boom. Those 2 guys there, the guy that laughed nervously, he was afraid of jumping, but he was qualified. The guy who wasn't afraid of jumping, he was qualified. You can't be brave if you're not afraid. I love that line. You cannot have a courageous moment in your life if you didn't first have fear. So the like a diamond needs carbon and heat and pressure to become that carbon turns into the diamond. The fear turns into the courage because of the pressure and the heat of the situation.
And this is pure gold. I'm getting fired up right now because what you're telling me, this reminds me of the very first time. One of the things that I do is they take a Harley Davidson motorcycle and they attach one to each one of my arms. and then let them take off. And the very first time we did it, it was just an experiment. We said, I think I can do this. I don't really know. We were booked to do it, but I'd never tried it before. So the day before, we had to try it. And I remember there was that moment when you're warmed up, you're ready, and it was either we're going to either do this or we're not going to do this.
Right.
But you won't know unless you try. And I remember, getting on there, and that was like a life-changing thing. The very first time we did that, that was a life change because it was that whole courageous moment. We don't know what's going to happen, but we're going to do it. And it was like had I waited and listened to everybody, I mean, my wife didn't want me to do it. Nobody wanted me to do it.
You'd have become an unarmed self-defense specialist after that if that went wrong.
Absolutely. I mean, but it was just one of those things. And I love if people are listening, well, hopefully they're going to get on your site and get some of this stuff because this stuff is gold. This stuff changes lives. This is so much more than taking a class. It's about a total life change. And just, I know we've been, how are we doing on time?
We are at 1 hour and 6 minutes.
Can we just do a couple quick things?
Sure. Yeah. I want to just, I know I go deep in these rabbit holes and it consumes stuff and you probably have 10 questions you can get to, but I want to say something to the people out there listening who there are certain personality types that don't really need my program. Like you didn't need it to do all this stuff. You figured it out because there was some artistic drive, like an archaeologist, you were digging for something and I'm going to do this. Like what possessed you to hold on to 2 Harleys and go for it? Let's see what happens here. I think I can hold that, right? But had you talked to me the day before and went, yeah, I'm having second thoughts on this, or I'm ruminating, I could have helped you reconcile it much quicker. And so where you maybe didn't sleep well and had like 18 hours of negative thoughts, and then you went, fuck it. I promised people I'm going to do this. Like, let's find out if this works. What a lot of it is, this goes back to what you said earlier, that everyone experiences fear, even if it's semantics, we don't want to call it the fear. This goes back to my really important example of doubt, hesitation, fixation, procrastination, non-clinical anxiety. Those 5 stages, everyone goes through that, where you can go, whether it's your wife or a kid or a family member, you come in and you see someone like this, sitting there and you go, what's up? And they go, nothing. You go, what do you mean nothing? Your body language is like, you just looked at death in the mirror and you go, I don't know, I'm going to get through this. I'm fucked. Like, right. And what they're doing is, I tell people, in our course, I say, you can't solve the problem if you become the problem. And if you don't have self-awareness, you can't have situational awareness. So there are some people that go, I don't need fear management. I'm an entrepreneur. I do it. The psychology of my program is about managing how long we stay in a fear loop, how long the self-awareness component of recognizing, I just got a fear spike now from this. What is that telling me? What do I need to research? What do I need to learn? So the program's much more robust than, I don't want people thinking like I got lots of people go, I'm not afraid of any man or anything. And I go, well, it sounds like a really defensive comment that you obviously are very afraid of something. Maybe your self-image, this projection of, right? Anyways, but go ahead. I interrupted. I want to share that a little bit.
Well, no, I think that's fantastic. And I do think, you say it's not for everybody. I think almost everybody can learn from this for this reason. Do you want to learn fear management by accident and take the long road? Or
Right.
would you rather learn to attack it, with a systematic program that, you can save yourself literally years of, we talked about sabotage earlier.
Yeah. Listen, this is interesting, man. I've had, so my main business is training law enforcement and military. So I have an inkling of what actually happens in a high stress situation. I get lots of feedback. I'm friends with people I've known for decades teaching this, right? 1993, I closed my school. That's when I went full-time teaching. It's over 30 years I've been teaching first responders. And so I'll be teaching a class with these guys, and then I'll go, does anyone have any questions? And I got like a 12-man SWAT team in front of me. They've been in gunfights. They've been in knife fights. They've been in any questions. Okay, let's take a 10-minute break. And then like a guy will come up to me and go, "Hey, Coach Blauer, I got a question." I go, "I just said, are there any questions?" He goes, "I don't want to ask in front of the group." And this is like nonstop in every class. These guys will jump out of an airplane, fast rope, low crawl, get in a gunfight, but they're afraid of public speaking. So I tell people, you may be doing something extraordinary. You're a singer, you're an actor, you're a entrepreneur, but you're on your third marriage, or you have a shitty relationship with your kids, or you can't say I'm sorry, or you under no circumstances can you do any public speaking, right? So you may be like amazing, where people look at you as like, wow, look at that guy. And I go, hey, why don't you stand up and tell everyone, what happened this week? And that was great. And they're like, I can't. You're talking about, you run like a $10 million company and you do this, you can't talk in front of people? No, public speaking, my number one fear. So you're right, man. Like, fear throttles everything we do, who we marry, who we talk to, how much money we make, where we live, how much weight we can lift, and whether or not, most importantly for me, my bias is whether or not you can protect yourself or your family. But I'm going to shut up now. Go ahead, ask your question.
Oh, no, we have so much that we could cover. Hopefully we can maybe come back and do a part 2 sometime.
Sure, I'd love that.
Because I just want to kind of close with, because we've gone over time, want to respect your time. Can you tell us just a little bit about what makes the spear system different, the high gear? There's just so many things. We don't have time to get into it all, but I want people that are looking for something different than, just this traditional class, or I'm going to take, my daughter the other day was saying in college, every time they offer a class, it's, the times are not available and it's just real basic stuff. Can you share what makes the spear system different and how it will change the way you respond? I mean, to me, I started reading about it, I'm like, this is genius stuff. There's nothing else out there like it. So can you share a little bit about with that, and then where people can find out more about you?
Sure. So SPEAR is an acronym for Spontaneous Protection Enabling Accelerated Response. And really what it is, it's about the study of how physiology elicits this DNA level survival response. Sudden danger, hands come up, protect the head, push away danger. So I figured out, using classical conditioning and a bunch of other drills, a way to weaponize the startle flinch. The push away danger is part of the cross extensor chain. It's the strongest movement pattern, a quarter extremity movement pattern that anyone, regardless of gender, can do. So if you go, yeah, but will it work for me? I'm 5'3", 120 pounds. Again, it's the strongest thing you can do. You go, well, I'm 6'5", I'm 240. Again, it's the strong. It doesn't matter, right? Mm-hmm. And it's stuff that's hardwired in you. So it's the easiest stuff to learn. So I created a whole system around physiology, and then I included psychology and a very, potent blend of fear management to go in there. Because I tell people, like I said earlier, if you don't manage the fear, you don't manage the fight. You gotta be in there. So we've got the psychology, we've got the fear management, we got natural instinctive human movement. And listen, it sounds almost, controversial to say nothing like it, because there's all these other martial artists out there maybe listening to this call going, who is this asshole? What do you mean, my system, right? The SPEAR system is what I call the bridge to other martial arts. All martial arts are complex motor skills. If you don't weather the ambush, you don't get to the complex motor skill. So Bob Willis, a very, very famous police trainer, he wrote one of the original books like decades ago called Street Survival and the Tactical Edge. And these are encyclopedic books for law enforcement. He watched me teach a cop symposium in 1995. He saw me teach, and he comes up to me. He says, you teach the 3 seconds before the fight everyone else teaches. Think about that. Everyone teaches how to get out of a headlock, what to do if a guy's got a gun in your face, what to do if somebody, grabs you by the lapels, what to do if somebody takes a swing at you. The fight has already started in every one of those scenarios. The most important are the 3 seconds before that, where you get that fear spike and you suddenly go, oh shit. What you do there is going to determine what you do next. And so that's really what the SPEAR system is about. Again, it's that biological airbag. And so you could be listening to this, you're a black belt, you have your own school, your brown belt, your blue belt. We have thousands of people that study my system. And if you think about it in the airbag metaphor, let's say you've got like an old muscle car that you restored. It doesn't have an airbag in it. We know that airbags save lives. If you could take an aftermarket airbag and put it in there, you're a great driver, you have a great car. You don't need the airbag because of you. You need the airbag because of an asshole who's drunk driving or texting and driving. That's like the asshole in the street. We don't need situational awareness and startle, flinch, push away danger because of us. I'm not going to walk down the street and attack me. I'm not going to mug myself, right? It's the asshole in the street who goes opportunistic. I'm going to hit this person. So in that sense, if you have no training, we've got programs for you. I train the highest level from tier 1 all the way down. We got a course. I'll run through the courses really quick. EOPS, Essentials of Personal Safety, 2-hour online. My team takes you through situational awareness, fear management, some simple exercises. Hit me up after the show. We'll get your daughter in the next course. It's 2 hours online.
Awesome.
Boom. Right. And there's no charge for you. I probably shouldn't have said that on the air. People are like, damn, those guys get all the sponsor deals, but it's $49. It's $49 for the whole household. Like if you're at home with your wife and you got 3 kids, all of you can do it. It's $40. It's dirt cheap. I wanted to make it so that anybody could do it. The next course we do is Be Your Own Bodyguard. And I love this course. It's a 1-day course on self-defense called Be Your Own Bodyguard. The original origin of the thought was this: you and I can't afford bodyguards. So who's our bodyguard if something happens? We are our own bodyguard. How can I think like a bodyguard? What do I need to do? What do I need to know? And it's a 1-day course, and it's taught with the efficiency of a first aid course. Like you can take a tactical medicine first aid course in 4 and 6 hours and have life-saving skills. So I just took everything I knew and I said, what would I teach a person that I really cared about in a day? What can I teach them? Detect, diffuse, defend. What is situational awareness? How can I improve that? How do I de-escalate? And some simple quarter extremity explosive movements, stun and run, get out of there. That's what most of the world wants. They don't want to be in a fight. They want to be nowhere near a situation where they might have to fight. And then as people get more serious, we started a garage gym program where people can get mentored by me and trained by me. And then people go, you know what? I want to teach this stuff. I want to add it. And so we have a trainers program. So that's kind of the gamut of all the different verticals in the company. Again, been doing this, teaching 43 years. If we count my wrestling, I started doing stuff when I'm 7, I'm 60 now. So 53 years I've been, still moving, doing stuff all related around, this sort of combatives, force on force stuff. As far as the best place to reach me, if you want to learn more about the company, BlauerTrainingSystems.com, and I'll send you links to this stuff. So my last name, Blauer, Blauer, Systems Training. That's our corporate page where you can find out about our corporate stuff, the no fear stuff, our equipment, the high gear. We don't have time to talk about high gear, but it's a force on force scenario training. We can do another show. If your audience is interested and they got questions, I'm happy to come back and do another show. We got a lot of mutual friends that I have tons of mutual respect for. So hopefully, I can help out there. But we designed in the late 80s and produced it in the early 90s, a force on force scenario suit that revolutionized training for military teams, police teams, MMA. We've had from Randy Couture to BJ Penn to Frank Mir using it to prepare for courses, and then thousands of people around the world using it to practice and simulate real self-defense. Of course, I'm on Instagram and Facebook and all of the other social media platforms. And if people specifically want to learn more about the no fear, it has nothing to do with self-defense other than holistic self-defense, how to protect myself and my family and the way I think. We have a very cool free ebook that if you go to info.tonyblauer.com, it's right up on top there. You can click it, get your ebook. And I'm going to tell everyone shamelessly, we're going to try and sell you other shit that's going to help you. But that's just the nature of the beast, especially these days where our businesses have pivoted and we've got to reach out online much more.
Absolutely. And everything, I've been looking at your stuff. It's all stuff that adds value. That's what I try and tell people is that you're making an investment in yourself with these type of programs. You can invest. Everybody spends their money somewhere. Why not invest in something that's actually going to change your life? So I want to thank our guest today, Tony Blauer, for investing in all of our listeners today and for just this masterclass, deep dive into all things self-defense. I mean, I can't even call it that anymore.
Right.
But, it was fantastic. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you. It was so good to be here, and I hope people got something out of it, and happy to come back if there's interest.